Dear friends, welcome to the Eastern Front channel. And today I have exclusive material, namely a captured German document that indicates how to fight the Americans and the British on the Western Front. The title of the document is as follows: Memo number 35 on combat training of troops, based on the experience of defensive combat operations against the Americans. I found the document on the website of the Russian-German project for the digitization of the documents in the archives of the Russian Federation. If you like this material, write in comments. I will be happy to look for other interesting World War II documents. As you know, the Second Front was opened towards the end of the World War II, and as a result of the first military clashes, the Germans determined the strength and weakness of the Allies. The confrontation between the Germans and the Americans were relatively short in time, but sufficient for the leadership of the Wehrmacht to draw certain conclusions. So let's see how the German command saw the Americans and the British. The Americans are characterized by the massive use of tanks, artillery and air force. The US Army was very dependent on the support of its air force. American tanks lagged far behind the Germans, so they relied on aircraft. American tanks are ineffective in restricted visibility terrain. They are afraid to fight in the woods or in the city because of the massive use of the Panzerfausts. As a rule, when American troops encounter a section of terrain where the enemy could supposedly be, they clear this place with all type of weapons, and only then push their soldiers there. About Panzerfaust, it's worth saying that it was really a formidable weapon. The Red Army even developed a special tactic to deal with the Panzerfaust in the city. The ideal tactic for dealing with the US Army tanks. The Germans considered the location of their troops in the bushes or on the streets of the city. The Americans are very fond of using all types of artillery to suppress the enemy. Therefore, the Germans created a multi-level defensive system. So you can protect the soldiers from the artillery and prepare them for the subsequent assault. On a stationary front, the German soldiers are often targeted by Americans as they move. American soldiers, noticing the movement, immediately open fire. And the Germans made one interesting observation. The Americans stop all their attacks in the middle of the day. This is most likely due to the regrouping of their troops at this time. So the Wehrmacht soldiers reduced all their movements to the maximum and left all important movements for this time. It has also been observed that the Americans avoid close combat and don't attack in the morning. The document says that American soldiers cannot withstand long shelling and retreat. Therefore, as an instruction, the Germans propose to suppress American soldiers with fire as much as possible, and if it possible, attack from the flank. If the area occupied by US soldiers is smoky, it's required to cover it with artillery fire. American attacks are usually predictable and repeat according to the same plan, even if the previous attack was unsuccessful. American soldiers prefer to avoid close combat and don't fight at night. At night, the Americans go into deep defense, and the guard duty is poorly organized. Therefore, in order to recapture positions for American soldiers, at night the Germans, using small assault groups, sneak up on the positions of American troops. So they take them by surprise and sow panic, forcing them to retreat. The document also says that the American soldiers are poor pursuers and will only try to finish off only in a short distance. Therefore, retreat can be a profitable maneuver if the tactical advantage is lost. If we talk about the infantry, the Americans are fundamentally different enemy than the Russians. They relied more on firepower and armored vehicles than on stamina and the willingness to force close combat. An effective tactics against the US aircraft is camouflage and immobilization. Here it must be taken into account that at the time of the battles on the Western Front, The Luftwaffe aircraft no longer had an advantage in the air. and couldn't give a worthy rebuff to the Americans. That's why Germans recommend avoiding collisions with aircraft. The Germans even had a joke about this. When you see a green plane, it's the American Air Force. When you see a brown plane, it's a British Air Force. When you don't see a single plane, it's a Luftwaffe. In order to protect your equipment from American air raids, you need to avoid dense traffic, always use observers, and if possible, postpone all important movements for the night. Dear friends, that's all for today. As I saw from these documents, due to the lack of resources, Germans began to use partisan tactics. So they had a really hard lesson on the Eastern Front and tried to use this tactic for defense. But without aviation that was lost basically on the Eastern Front, they don't have much possibilities for maneuvers. Write your comments, what do you think about this document, and is it interesting for you, such a documentary? Subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so, press the bell and you will never miss a new video. And as usual, it was Tim and I wish you peace and health. See you.